Hey YouTube, Historical Doug here. Thanks for the click. Welcome to the first video in a series we've titled 10 People You've Heard of But Don't Know Why. I got the idea for the series while listening to an audiobook biography of Napoleon recently. Talleyrand came walking through the story at one point, and I had heard the name several times in the past but didn't remember anything about him. I had always assumed he was British, with a name that sounded like what the guy who started the fox hunt would shout at the start of the hunt. Got me thinking about how many historical figures there are that I've heard of but don't really know why. I've come up with a long list of figures who range from those I think most people have heard of but don't really know the details of their story or only some element of it, to those I believe people are only vaguely familiar with and don't really know their story at all but should. This video is the first in a series covering many of those historical figures who made my list. A couple of explanatory thoughts before I begin. First, I tried not to make this too U.S.-centric, and hopefully have accomplished that to a certain degree. But hey, we're Americans. We've been kicking ass for 200 years. We're 10-1, to quote the great historical figure Bill Murray. And that is where most of my study of history has occurred. Second, on a related note, I tried not to make this too Western-centric, but for similar reasons. I'm sure that influence will be significant, particularly given the premise that these figures are ones that I've heard of. Okay, the second point is the images included within each section are not intended to be perfectly accurate representations of the scenes. Just something to look at while I'm talking at you. I feel like I can spot an AI image in a heartbeat, and I'm sure you can too. In most cases, I believe AI has done a decent job here of creating images that look like the historical figures, but there were definitely some limitations on its ability to do that. Don't get too hung up on the historical accuracy of the scenes. Lastly, these could have easily been 30-minute or even 3-hour individual videos on each of these historical figures, but it's not my intention to present their entire bios. The point is just to summarize what the figure is most known for, just to hit the high points. If there's an appetite for a more detailed review, I will consider changing the format. Okay, let's get started with the man who was the inspiration for the list, Talleyrand. Number 1, Talleyrand. Charles, or probably Charles, Maurice de Talleyrand Périgord, commonly referred to as Talleyrand, was born in Paris, France on February 2nd, 1754. He was born into an aristocratic, though not wealthy, family, and as a young man he studied Catholic theology at the Sorbonne. He was ordained as a Catholic priest in 1779 at the age of 25 and was consecrated as a bishop in 1789. Despite his education and vocation, he appears to have been a secular Catholic at heart, studying Enlightenment figures of the time and abandoning Catholic practices by the end of the French Revolution. He clearly supported the anti-church stands of the revolutionaries, including appropriation of church properties, and contributed to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. He also supported public education. After the Revolution, he was elected a member of the Department of Paris. In 1792, he made 2 trips to London to attempt to ease tensions with the British and was appointed deputy ambassador to Britain. The Paris massacres occurred in September 1792, and Talleyrand left Paris for London at that time. The National Convention issued an arrest warrant for Talleyrand, and he fled to the U.S., where he interacted with national figures of the day, including spending time as a house guest of Aaron Burr. He reportedly had a brief encounter with Benedict Arnold in Falmouth on the way to the U.S. Talleyrand returned to France in 1796 and became foreign minister in 1797. He was reportedly behind bribes in the XYZ affair, where he and other French authorities attempted to extort bribes from American diplomats during negotiations over trade disputes and the seizure of American ships, ultimately leading to the quasi-war between France and the U.S. It was during this period that Talleyrand became a close ally of Napoleon. He played a role in the coup that occurred in 1799 and was appointed foreign minister under Napoleon. Talleyrand was a key figure in Napoleon's government, but eventually lost faith in Napoleon and resigned as foreign minister in 1807. It was about that time that Talleyrand began working against Napoleon and on behalf of the French royalists. In 1814, Talleyrand was actively working for restoration of the Bourbon monarchy and was instrumental in the negotiation of the 1815 treaty between France, Britain, and Austria. He was ultimately appointed Grand Chamberlain of France in 1815 or 16 by Louis XVIII. a mostly ceremonial role. He continued to be a national figure in France until 1834 and died on May 17, 1838. He is remembered for political adaptability and for his role as the quintessential diplomat engaging in numerous successful negotiations. He is viewed as an example of the pragmatic, possibly unprincipled politician. Okay, let's move on to historical figure number 2, Simon Bolivar. Simon Bolivar is a name that echoes across South America as a symbol of freedom. Born on July 24, 1783 in Caracas, Venezuela, he came from a wealthy Creole family. Orphaned by 9, Bolivar was raised by tutors who introduced him to Enlightenment ideals, liberty, equality, and self-determination. As a young man, Bolivar made an extended trip to Europe. In Paris, he witnessed Napoleon's rise and the revolutionary ideals sweeping the continent. He likely returned to South America, convinced that Spanish rule in South America could be ended. In 1810, revolution did erupt in Venezuela, and Bolivar joined the fight, winning victories but also enduring crushing defeats and exile. In 1819, Bolivar led one of history's most daring campaigns, crossing the freezing Andes Mountains to surprise Spanish forces in New Granada. The victory of Boyacá secured Colombian independence and earned him the title El Libertador. Over the next decade, Bolivar's campaign freed Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and the new nation of Bolivia, named in his honor. He had aspirations of uniting them into one powerful federation, Gran Colombia. His vision was undone by political rivalries and regional divisions, and in 1830, Gran Colombia dissolved. Weary and ill, Bolivar resigned and prepared to go into exile. On December 17, 1813, Simon Bolivar died at 47 in Santa Marta, Colombia. He did not die wealthy, but he did leave a legacy of liberation and greatly impacted much of the continent of South America. Okay, moving on to historical figure number 3, Catherine the Great. Catherine the Great, born Sophie Friederike Auguste von Anhalt-Zerbst in 1729, was not Russian by birth. She was a minor German princess, chosen at 14 years of age to marry the future Emperor Peter III of Russia, who happened to be her second cousin. Sophie was reportedly ambitious and intelligent and embraced her new country of Russia. She converted to Russian Orthodoxy, took the name Catherine, and immersed herself in Russian language, culture, and politics. Her marriage to Peter was troubled. He was reportedly unpopular, erratic, and alienated both the nobility and the army. In 1762, just months after becoming emperor, Peter was overthrown in a coup supported by the Imperial Guard, with Catherine at its center. Soon after, Peter was dead under mysterious circumstances, leaving Catherine sole ruler of the Russian Empire. Catherine reigned for 34 years, from 1762 to 1796, the longest ruling female monarch in Russian history. She championed the Enlightenment, corresponding with Voltaire and Diderot, and sought to modernize Russia's administration, education, and economy. Her reign was also one of expansion. Through war, diplomacy, and colonization, Russia extended its borders deep into the Black Sea region, Crimea, and parts of Poland, making it a dominant European power. Catherine built new hospitals and schools, introduced a new legal code, and supported religious tolerance. She requested the construction of many academic buildings, including the first public library, made by her command, now called the Russian National Library. However, Catherine did nothing to improve the vast majority of people, the serfs. Yet Catherine's reforms did not reach all. She strengthened the power of the nobility, and the vast majority of Russians remained serfs tied to the land. Rebellions, most famously Pugachev's rebellion of 1773, tested her rule, and she crushed them decisively. By the time of her death in 1796, Catherine had transformed Russia into a cultural and political force in Europe. She left a legacy as a shrewd, energetic ruler, remembered both for her enlightened ideals and the autocratic reality of her reign. Okay, historical figure number 4, Alexander von Humboldt. Alexander von Humboldt, born in 1769 in Berlin, was one of the most remarkable explorers and scientists of his age. Unlike many scholars of his time, Humboldt wanted to experience the world directly, to see nature not as separate pieces but as an interconnected whole. In 1799, Humboldt embarked on the journey that would define his life. With his colleague Aimé Bonpland, he traveled through Spanish America, today's Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Cuba, and Mexico. They climbed volcanoes, mapped rivers, and gathered thousands of plants and animal specimens. Humboldt was one of the first to describe ecosystems along elevation zones, noting how vegetation on a mountain mirrored that across latitudes, from tropical forests at the base to icy tundra at the peak. His adventurous spirit took him deep into the Orinoco River basin, where he documented species unknown to Europeans, and later up the slopes of Chimborazo in the Andes, thought then to be the highest mountain in the world. Though he did not reach the summit, his observations revolutionized how scientists understood climate, altitude, and geography. Returning to Europe, Humboldt published his multi-volume works, including Cosmos, which sought to describe the universe as a unified whole. He argued that climate, geology, plants, and animals were all interconnected, a revolutionary idea that inspired generations of scientists, including Charles Darwin. Humboldt was also outspoken against colonial exploitation and slavery, noting the suffering he witnessed in the Americas. His writings combined scientific precision with a deep concern for justice. By the time of his death in 1859, Alexander von Humboldt had become one of the most celebrated figures in the world. Often called the Second Columbus, he was more than an explorer. He was a visionary who revealed the web of life on Earth and helped lay the foundations for modern ecology and environmental science. Okay, historical figure number 5, Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman is a figure that I think most people, at least Americans, are already familiar with for her role in the Underground Railroad, helping American slaves escape to freedom. But I found that there was more to her story that was interesting and that I was not familiar with. Harriet Tubman was born into slavery around 1822 in the state of Maryland with the birth name of Araminta. Her early life was typically harsh as a slave, long hours in the fields, brutal treatment, and as a child, a blow to the head that left her with lifelong pain and sudden bouts of sleep. In 1849, fearing she would be sold farther south, Tubman made a daring escape. Alone, traveling by night, and guided by the North Star, she crossed into Pennsylvania and into freedom. Tubman returned to the South again and again, some 13 times, risking capture and death to guide about 70 enslaved people to freedom through the Underground Railroad. She used disguises, secret codes and songs, and safe houses along the way. Her courage earned her the nickname Moses. When the Civil War broke out, Tubman joined the Union cause, serving as a nurse, scout, and spy. This is the part I was least familiar with and part of the reason she is on this list. In 1863, she helped plan and lead the Combahee River Raid in South Carolina, freeing more than 700 enslaved people. The first woman in U.S. history to command an armed military operation. After the war, Harriet Tubman settled in Auburn, New York. She continued to fight for justice, speaking for women's suffrage and establishing a home for elderly African Americans. When she died in 1913, she was celebrated as one of America's bravest freedom fighters. Okay, historical figure number 6, Ataturk. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was the founding father of modern Turkey, a soldier, statesman, and reformer whose vision reshaped an empire into a nation. Ataturk was born in 1881 in Salonika, then part of the Ottoman Empire, today Thessaloniki, Greece. Ataturk rose through the ranks of the Ottoman army and became known for his sharp intellect and courage. During World War I, he distinguished himself at the Gallipoli campaign in 1915, where his leadership played a crucial role in stopping the Allied advance. The victory made him a national hero. After the Ottoman defeat in the war, occupying powers sought to divide Anatolia. In 1919, Ataturk began organizing resistance, uniting scattered groups into a national movement. Eventually, his forces defeated the invaders. By 1923, the Treaty of Lausanne recognized the sovereignty of the new Republic of Turkey. Ataturk became its first president. As leader, Ataturk launched sweeping reforms. He abolished the Sultanate and Caliphate, ending centuries of Ottoman rule. He introduced a new legal system, replacing Islamic courts with secular law. He modernized education, promoted science, and encouraged women's rights, granting women the vote long before many European nations. The Arabic script was replaced with the Latin alphabet, making literacy more accessible. He also promoted a new sense of Turkish national identity, emphasizing secularism, progress, and unity. Ataturk served as president until his death in 1938. He is remembered not only as a skilled commander, but as a visionary who transformed Turkey into a modern secular republic. To this day, his portrait hangs in classrooms, offices, and public spaces throughout the country, a reminder of his enduring influence. Historical figure number 7, Edwin Hubble. Edwin Powell Hubble, born in 1889 in Marshfield, Missouri, was a man whose work would forever change our understanding of the cosmos. Though he began his career in law, his true passion lay in physics and astronomy, a calling that would place him among the most important scientists of the 20th century. After earning his doctorate in astronomy from the University of Chicago, Hubble joined the Mount Wilson Observatory in California in 1919. There, he had access to the world's most powerful telescope at the time, the 100-inch Hooker telescope. It would become his window to the universe. At the time, astronomers debated the nature of spiral nebulae. Were they part of our Milky Way or distant galaxies of their own? In 1923, Hubble made a breakthrough by identifying a type of star called a Cepheid, variable in the Andromeda Nebula. He proved that Andromeda was far outside our galaxy. The universe was far larger than anyone had imagined. Through careful observation and measurement, in 1929, he discovered a relationship between a galaxy's distance and its velocity away from us. This became known as Hubble's law. It revealed that the universe is expanding, a finding that provided crucial evidence for what would later be called the Big Bang Theory. Hubble's work combined meticulous observational astronomy with the principles of physics. He transformed cosmology into a quantitative science, establishing that galaxies are fundamental units of the universe and that the cosmos itself evolves over time. When Edwin Hubble died in 1953, he left behind a universe no longer confined to a single galaxy, but a vast expanding tapestry of billions. His name lives in the Hubble Space Telescope, which continues to push the boundaries of discovery, just as he did. Historical figure number 8, Charlemagne. Charlemagne, also known as Charles the Great, was one of the most influential rulers of the Middle Ages. Born around the year 742, he became king of the Franks, expanding his realm into a vast empire, and earned the title Father of Europe, for uniting much of the continent under his rule. Charlemagne was the son of Pepin the Short, the first Carolingian king. When Pepin died in 1768, the kingdom was divided between Charlemagne and his brother Carloman. But after Carloman's sudden death a few years later, Charlemagne became sole ruler. Through nearly constant campaigns, Charlemagne expanded his kingdom into an empire that stretched across modern France, Germany, Italy, and beyond. He defeated the Lombards in Italy, subdued the Saxons after decades of resistance, and pushed the frontiers against Muslim forces in Spain. His empire united Western and Central Europe in a way not seen since the Roman Empire. On Christmas Day in the year 800, while attending Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, Charlemagne was crowned Emperor of the Romans by Pope Leo III. This moment symbolized the fusion of Roman, Christian, and Germanic traditions, laying the foundation for what later became known as the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne was not only a warrior, but also a reformer. He strengthened royal administration, standardized laws, and promoted learning in what became known as the Carolingian Renaissance. He invited scholars like Alcuin of York to his court, encouraged the copying of classical texts, and reformed the way Latin was taught. His reign revitalized education and cultures across Europe. Charlemagne died in 814 in Aachen, his favorite capital. He was buried in the cathedral he built there, which still stands today. His empire did not long survive intact, but his vision of a united Christian Europe profoundly shaped the continent's history. Historical figure number 9, Benjamin Rush. Benjamin Rush is a figure I believe would be on the not even heard of him end of the spectrum, though to me he is the Forrest Gump of early American history. He keeps showing up in important scenes. He signed the Declaration of Independence, reformed American medicine, and fought for causes decades ahead of his time. Yet today his name is far less known than Franklin or Jefferson. This is the story of Benjamin Rush, the founding father of American medicine. Benjamin Rush was born on January 4th, 1746 in Byberry, Pennsylvania, just outside Philadelphia. Orphaned at a young age, Rush's intellect caught the attention of local ministers who guided him toward education. By age 15, he had graduated from the College of New Jersey, now Princeton, and set his sights on medicine. He studied in Philadelphia, then traveled to Scotland to earn his medical degree in the University of Edinburgh in 1768. Rush returned home as colonial tensions with Britain boiled over. A passionate writer, he published essays championing American liberty and criticizing slavery, positions radical for his time. He is reported to have been consulted by Thomas Paine in the writing of the historically influential pamphlet Common Sense. And in 1776, at just 30 years of age, he became a Pennsylvania delegate to the Continental Congress and the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence. He believed freedom was not just political, but moral and personal, calling for education reform, abolition, and improved care for the mentally ill. During the Revolutionary War, Rush served as Surgeon General of the Middle District of the Continental Army. He fought not just the British, but also disease and poor hygiene in military camps. His blunt criticism of Army medical conditions and even of General George Washington's leadership led to political disputes, but his commitment to public health never wavered. After the war, Rush returned to teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, becoming one of the most influential medical educators in America. He published the first American chemistry textbook, advanced clinical training, and advocated for humane treatment of the mentally ill, earning him the title of the Father of American Psychiatry. He was also a pioneer in addiction treatment, describing alcoholism as a disease, not a moral failing. Rush's belief that medicine should serve society matched his activism for abolition, women's education, and prison reform. While some of his beliefs about race and gender would be roundly criticized and dismissed today, he was clearly ahead of his time in many of his views. In 1813, while still active in teaching and writing, Rush died during a typhus epidemic in Philadelphia. His life bridged the political revolution that birthed the United States and the medical reforms that shaped it. Though history often remembers the generals and presidents, Benjamin Rush's legacy lives on in hospitals, classrooms, and the very idea that health and liberty are inseparable. Historical figure number 10, Tecumseh. The first of what would be at least a few influential Native Americans on the list, Shawnee Chief Tecumseh was born around 1768 near present-day Chillicothe, Ohio. Raised during the turmoil of the American Revolution and the Northwest Indian War, Tecumseh witnessed the loss of Shawnee lands to treaties he likely considered illegitimate. These early experiences shaped his lifelong mission to unite all Native American tribes into a confederation strong enough to resist further U.S. expansion. Reportedly charismatic and eloquent, Tecumseh traveled thousands of miles from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, urging Native unity. He rejected the idea that any one tribe could sell land, declaring that the land belonged to all Native people. Alongside his brother, Tenskwatawa, the prophet, he established Prophetstown in 1808 in present-day Indiana. It became the heart of his confederation, a place of cultural revival and political resistance. In 1811, while Tecumseh was away rallying southern tribes, U.S. forces under Governor William Henry Harrison attacked Prophetstown in the Battle of Tippecanoe. The defeat weakened his movement, but not Tecumseh's goals of unity. When the War of 1812 erupted, Tecumseh allied with the British, seeing them as the best hope to halt American expansion. His leadership was decisive in early victories, including the capture of Detroit. On October 5, 1813, at the Battle of the Thames in present-day Ontario, Tecumseh was killed in combat. His death shattered the dream of a unified Native Confederation. Tecumseh's vision of unity and a steadfast defense of Native sovereignty remain an enduring legacy. He is remembered as a warrior, diplomat, and a visionary for his people. Okay, that's installment 1 of people you've heard of but don't know why. I did this list as much for myself as anything. I expect I'll do more extensive follow-up research on some of the figures mentioned, but it's good to do this summary review. If you enjoyed this video, of course, give it a like, and if you'd like to see more in the series, subscribe and hit the notifications button. I appreciate your time.